The CHL playoffs are still going, and it's one Blue Jacket is going to be left standing and heading to the Memorial Cup. We're going to be talking about all of that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. With me is, as always, my co-host, Hayden Houshorn. And we just want to let you know that Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're on YouTube. We have that new co-host bump on YouTube is hitting real good right about now. So if you haven't jumped on that yet, go ahead, hit subscribe on YouTube. And we're on SiriusXM. So if you're a SiriusXM listener, open the app, type in Locked On Blue Jackets. You can find us there. So, Hayden, the Blue Jackets are not in the playoffs. The Cleveland Monsters did not make the playoffs. But the Blue Jackets prospect, the baby Blue Jackets, as I like to call them, have had a decent amount of success. And we've kind of been tracking them, seeing who's going to go far, who's not. There's been some upsets out in the WHL. And we are, like I said, at the top. We're kind of down to, it's going to be one player left standing. The Sarnia Sting and the Sarnia Sting with Luca Del Bel Belluz on lost in 6 games to the London Knights. Luca Del Bel Belluz had a pretty good tournament, but I mean, what is he supposed to do? 15 points in 16 games. I don't know what more this guy can do, you know. And I don't think it was the team was bad. I think it's just that the London Knights are a friggin' powerhouse this season.
I've heard of them. I was gonna say, I know there's probably a lot of people listening right now that aren't totally well versed on all the junior teams, but they hear London Knights and they're like, I think there's some guys that have came from that one. I think I've heard of that one. So yeah, they're a powerhouse, tough to beat. But yeah, Luca Del Bel Belluz, one of the wildest names to come out of last year's draft for the Jackets, and he's actually doing some stuff. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, second round pick. They took him 44th overall. He's probably going to be back in the OHL next season, and I think he's going to light it up. He had 40 goals in 66 games this season across 2 teams. Like I said, finishes his playoff run, 15 points, 8 goals, 7 assists in 16 games. I don't know. I really thought Sarnia was going to go all the way. They won their first series 4-2. They beat the second series 4-0. Unfortunately, they only won 2 games against London, so I think it's going to be a really interesting final. However, like, do we root for and this is the problem that I had the few years the Jackets made the playoffs. Do you root for the team that beat you so you can say you were beaten by the champions, or do you root for the team that's playing the team that beat you so you can watch the team that beat you be sad?
Yeah, it's absolute ultimate dilemma. I think it just depends on, were you a team that expected to beat that team, or were you a team that was kind of like an underdog and went up against the big bad team? You know what I mean? Like, if it was in the March Madness tournament, which here in the United States, I don't know if you know, Jay, we play a basketball tournament that has 64 college basketball teams in it. Familiar with it a little bit at all?
Yeah, I know of it. My in-law is a big college basketball. My father-in-law is a big college basketball guy, so I am aware.
Right. So, like, when those smaller schools kind of get far in the tournament and maybe they lose to a powerhouse school, maybe they're like, okay, well, we didn't really expect to lose, or we didn't expect to beat that team. So it's cool to see them go on and say, hey, we played them. But, or I guess in similar fashion, when Ohio State, the hockey team, lost in the Elite Eight to Quinnipiac, I wanted Quinnipiac to go on and win it all. And they did, which was really cool to see. I mean, I also wanted to see Minnesota win, but Quinnipiac came out in that final period and dominated. But anyway, so so sometimes depending on the situation you do, but also, like, when the Jackets lost to the Penguins in the playoffs, or the Capitals, or the Bruins, I never rooted for those teams. I was never like, I want to see those guys go win a cup. No, I was spiteful towards them.
Yeah, we are petty beings sometimes. I don't know what it is about the London Knights. Maybe this is just bias because of the names that I'm familiar with that were on the team. I don't want that team to win. Like I was really rooting for Sarnia, not just because of Del Bel Belluz, but again, I think it's fun when the underdog wins. I don't necessarily know that Sarnia is considered an underdog when it's the second seed versus the third seed, but I don't know. I thought they could do it. I was really excited for Sarnia. I watched a handful of their games this season after Del Bel Belluz was traded there. I was like, okay, let's see what he's like on a new team. And the answer is as good, if not better, than when he was on his old team. So it sucks that they loaded up the way that they did and then still kind of fell at that final hurdle. But I'm super excited for Del Bel Belluz to show up to rookie camp or to show up to training camp. He'll be in Traverse City this summer. So that's going to be real exciting. I'm looking for him to have a big impact at the prospect tournament.
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, he's a center, and we know the Blue Jackets are constantly trying to work that position. So Del Bel Belluz, I think he's a handsome-looking fella too. So those guys always do well when they come up to the league right away. They garner instant fans, and I think I remember, if I can recall from when he got drafted, he was kind of one of the more outgoing, excited to be with Columbus guys. So I think he did get a lot of fans early because of that. And he looks like he's a really solid, well-rounded player in the juniors. So hopefully that transitions to Traverse City. All the more reason to keep an eye on that when that comes up.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like Columbus fans have been hurt so many times by players not wanting to be there that anytime a player comes around is like, man, I'm super excited to play for Columbus. The fan base is just universally like, well, this is our son now. We have adopted him.
Yeah.
This is our child. So,
Yes.
would love to see Del Bel Belluz in the big leagues one day, but if not, I think he's gonna be an excellent AHLer, but I really do think he could slot in to the middle six for the Blue Jackets. Like you said, he's a center, so he's got less competition than some of probably the more talented wingers in the system, but I think he could be a guy that shores up that center depth. I don't think he's going to be like that franchise top line center, but if you can get a second or a third line center out of Del Bel Belluz, like I think you're on a winner there. In a minute, we are going to go ahead and switch over to the QMJHL, where we've still got two prospects that are alive and playing for their hopes. Unfortunately, they have to play each other in the championship series. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, I've got to tell you all about Gametime, because I don't know about you, Hayden, but I'm so bad at planning things. I tend to just wake up and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do today? And that doesn't really have a great environment to buying tickets to a concert or a comedy show or a sporting event, but luckily Gametime exists to make that stress go away. It's the biggest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets. They've got a best price guarantee. So if you find tickets in the same section and row for less on a different ticketing website, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. You can get images of your seat before you buy, so you can see if the view is restricted or if you're even going to be able to see from there. I know I personally like to sit up high in the upper bowl because then you can see the entire rink. Gametime will show you the view from your seat, which is awesome. So snag the tickets without the stress. With Gametime, all you have to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and then use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Terms and conditions apply. The QMJHL, I feel like, gets a bad rap for being the weakest of the three major junior leagues. The WHL is kind of the rough and tumble one. The OHL, I feel like, is always marketed as the highest skill and the best quality of hockey. But I have had a ton of fun watching the QMJHL playoffs this season. Is that because two of the more exciting Blue Jackets prospects are there? Maybe. But we talked about this a little bit off recording. We'll start with Quebec because they are just steamrolling right now. I didn't realize how good they'd been until I looked up and was like, oh, they haven't lost a game yet. They've played 12 games in these playoffs, and they are 12-0. They have swept every single series so far. Just a powerhouse of a team. And again, the Blue Jackets, they've got guys that are showing up on this team, or they've got one guy showing up on this team. James Malatesta, who is a prospect that previous to this season, I knew a little bit about, but he is, I believe, I always forget this, and every week I look it up, a 5th round draft pick of the Blue Jackets. And how often is it? We talked about this literally yesterday. How often is it that a 4th round draft pick or a 5th round draft pick makes the NHL and is a impact player? That being said, James Malatesta is 3rd on his team in scoring. He's got 14 points in 12 goals and in 12 games. That's like, you can't ask for anything else from a guy that was drafted in the 5th round. Like, I don't know, Jordan Malatesta was the biggest surprise of these playoffs for me. He was the guy that I thought, okay, we'll talk about the team because the team's going to be good, but as a player, I didn't think he was going to show up the way that he has.
No, he's been awesome for him so far. And just to go back to what you said about the QMJHL maybe not being revered as exciting as the O and the WHL, but all I would say to that is I feel like that probably was the stigma back in the day, just because just right off the bat, the OHL has a team like the London Knights. A lot of those teams in the Ontario Hockey League centered around, in the Toronto area, I assume, since that's where, it was just the center of the hockey universe. So there's probably huge, well-established fan bases there. Whereas the Q just probably has more newer teams, I would assume, over the last few years, maybe some more like teams that have come into the scene. But as long as I've been growing up and watching hockey, I've heard of these teams from the Q. So I think over time, it's kind of evened out a little bit, which is why you're seeing 2 teams here in the Q that are playing for a championship, or, that are going up against each other. Here we got 2 Jackets guys going at it. Jordan Dumais, one of them, who has just been lighting it up. And then this Malatesta guy, who just is another guy that I also forgot about, Jay, but you reminded me of his name, and it has me excited about this game, knowing that I can flip it on and see 2 future studs, hopeful studs going at it. At least probably 2 guys that I'll see in a Monsters uniform for sure at some point, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. James Malatesta, I feel like, is definitely a guy that is going to be more of a fringe NHLer. I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that plays in the AHL and is one of the first guys called up if there's an injury. I don't know that he's going to be an NHL player, but if you could get like 20 to 30 NHL games out of him in a season and, maybe 5 to 10 points, like for a 5th round draft pick, that feels like a win. Maybe he will, buck the trend. Maybe he will make it. We've seen 5th round and later draft picks have success before. He's another guy that is kind of on the smaller side, which I think is probably, again, why he fell so low. And we're going to talk about that in a minute with Jordan Dumais specifically. But James Malatesta, he's only 5'9". He's 190 pounds. Like, he's probably not done growing just yet. Like, he could probably tack on a little bit of mass. To get NHL ready. But James Malatesta is going to be on the Monsters next season. Because he turned 20 later this month, so he ages out of Major Junior. He's going to be on the Monsters this season, and I feel like he's going to be a name to watch.
I think he's a guy that sees himself kind of as a pure goal scorer, and at 5'9", you're right, he doesn't pop off the page immediately, which is why he probably slipped in the draft. But he's a guy who gets to Cleveland. If he can add something else to his game, maybe it's his passing, maybe it's his physicality. If he can just add something that helps him stick out amongst that roster and group, I think he could be a really exciting player. But definitely one to keep an eye out for, and a sneaky one that came up on us because we've known about Jordan Dumais. He's been crushing it all year long. Him and Denton
keeping up with Connor Bedard in the scoring, Yeah, and that's tough to do.
It is tough to do, and Denton Matejchuk. So it was always like, okay, there's Connor Bedard in the scoring. Matejchuk and Dumais have been lighting it up as well, and these are guys that we already have drafted, so I don't even have to worry about getting them. But maybe this Malatesta guy could be something. Jay, you might have found a diamond in the rough here with this guy. We'll keep an eye on him.
The vibes I get from Malatesta are kind of very similar to a guy that we talked about, again, last episode, actually, Matt Calvert. And another current CBJ prospect who people on this show, people who listen to this show, know I adore in Trey Fix-Wolanski. They all have this kind of, and everything I hear about James Malatesta, every time I talk to a scouting guy or a prospect guy about Malatesta, they're like, yeah, he has one speed and it's top. He only knows how to go all in. And that's a really great characteristic to have, I think, when you are 5'9" and probably a fringe NHL guy, but he gives me that kind of vibe of he's just going to wrecking ball Tasmanian devil his way around the ice, and I think it's going to work out for him in the same way that it's starting to work out for Trey Fix-Wolanski and that it did for Matt Calvert.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, he wears number 11. Which is just like Matt Calvert. So there you go. I assume he's wearing number 11 with Quebec. Yeah, it looks like these highlights are him with good old Q-Town. So look out for him on the ice.
Let's flip it because, like I said, it's prospect versus prospect here. Jordan Dumais has been lighting it up all season long. Halifax, again, they've been a really good playoff team. They won their first round 4-0. The second round 4-1. The third round they went down 2-0 and then won 4 games in a row to bring it back. I believe they were without Jordan Dumais for that third round. I believe he was injured, but I also believe he is coming back for this final. This to me is the series to watch in the queue. For the CHL playoffs, it's going to be London versus Peterborough in the OHL. I believe it is the Seattle Thunderbirds versus the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL. But for my money, this is going to be the series to watch. For Blue Jackets fans, obviously, to watch our guys. But if you are just like a casual hockey fan, this feels like the series to watch. It's going to be just non-stop breakneck pace, and I'm super excited about it.
Yes. We need both number 11s. Jordan Dumais also wears number 11 for Halifax. He is
wearing 11. Like that's a decent brand.
It is a decent brand. I absolutely love it. He had 50 goals this past season with Halifax. So this kid is an absolute stud. Yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited. Like I remember thinking, like just the other night when we recorded the episode, reacting to where the Blue Jackets fell in the draft lottery, and I just went about kind of the last couple of days just so upset. Like, man, that was supposed to be the future guy. We have future guys playing all over the place, guys that people have been saying like the Blue Jackets have been sucking for a while. Well, we've been sucking, accumulating draft picks, burning them on all these kids. They're in the juniors right now, lighting it up. And this episode is a complete 180 in terms of how I personally feel about the future as a Jackets fan. So if you're around here, if you're tuning into this show right now and you're feeling at all a little bit bad about not getting Connor Bedard, let's just watch some of these prospects tonight and forget about it. We got these guys in-house already. So these guys are going to be wearing Union blue this summer at the camp. Like let's get excited about these guys, and let's hopefully have it snowball from there.
Yeah. I just want to point out as well before we wrap up. So Jordan Dumais, we talked about it, 50 goals this season. The only 2 players that have scored more points than Jordan Dumais in a single season since the year 2001. One of them is Sidney Crosby.
I've heard of him.
He's decent, I've heard.
Penguins,
and the other
right?
guy is Alexander Radulov, who has had less of
an
impact.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Than Sidney Crosby has, but I feel like Dumais is in pretty good company there. 140 points this season. Crosby, I believe, in his last season had 160 something. So he's right up there with Sidney Crosby in the in the scoring records for the QMJHL. So, he's doing okay.
And Alexander Radulov, who is a guy that I miss very dearly. Him and Tyler Sagan, they had that like buddy relationship that was always so funny. I remember following them on Instagram a couple years ago, and Alexander Radulov was on Tyler Sagan's story, and Alexander Radulov said, he said, bleep, I'm on camera, and Tyler's like, you're not supposed to swear, and Alex says, F. Segi says I cannot swear. Oh, I just did it again. It was like, this is hilarious. This guy's a comedian.
Again, hockey players not known for being super quick on the draw,
If you're gonna be pulling a camera, first of all, don't pull out a camera in a locker room. That's just weird to begin with.
I think that's fine, actually.
Yes, but if you do, expect to hear some curse words, because I guess that's just how it goes.
What I have liked, we'll wrap the episode up in a second, but what I did like watching this season was, like this season and last season, was the Kepi videos, the handing over the Kepi for the MVP. And you can watch the media person walk in, and then you get to see some super interesting, like, camera work of like the camera just pointing up and then panning that way and then panning back down. I'm like, oh, someone is naked in this video.
Yeah, there's some skin out. Yeah,
like, whenever the camera moves in a weird way, I'm like, oh yeah, they didn't want to catch. Like, I think Jake Voracek hilariously is like notorious for being naked basically all of the time if he doesn't have to be wearing clothes. So my money is going to be would have been on him being basically naked in every Kepi video. RIP to Jake Voracek. He's not dead. He's just in Arizona, which is basically like being dead, as far as I understand it. Okay, so we'll wrap up. Obviously only one CBJ prospect can advance to the Memorial Cup. Is it Malatesta with the Ramparts, or is it Dumais with the Moosehead? Who do you think takes this series? Who are we going to be talking about next week as the victorious Blue Jackets prospect?
One of these teams has not lost a game. I think you said it was Quebec. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with the team that has not lost a game yet. Although I do know that Halifax has been playing very, very well, and Jordan Dumais probably the better prospect between the two. I'm gonna go with Quebec just simply because no one's beaten them yet. So
I also think that like this is Malatesta's last run at this. Dumais probably gonna be back in the Q next season. So I would like to see Malatesta win just to go out on that high note. But yeah, like you said, I don't think if Halifax wins a game, they'll have done better than any other team that Quebec has faced so far, So they could lose the series 4-1 and still be the second best team in the Q. But that's kind of all we've got for today. Later today, we've got another bonus episode coming out. I've got another draft profile that I did this weekend with Sam McGilligan of McKean's Hockey. We're going to be talking about Mikhail Gulyayev, who is, again, we've spent a lot of time talking about short prospects recently. He's another little guy. He's a 5'9" defender, so that's always fun. So we talk about him later today on that bonus episode. And then tomorrow, Hayden, I believe, it is our season review of Patrik Laine. So that'll be fun. And I'm sure that we won't have any kind of hot takes or opinions about how Patrik Laine was this season.
Yeah, he had a totally normal year. Nothing crazy happened.
Completely unremarkable. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And then after that, it's the weekend after that. So we get to enjoy some time off. We get to watch some playoff hockey, hopefully. We'll see how that goes, but I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOB FORSTER. You can find Hayden at HaydenH971 over on Twitter. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. We are on every podcasting app you can think of. We are on Spotify, Odyssey, Audible, the audiobook platform. You can find Locked On Blue Jackets there, which is real weird. You can find us on Sirius XM, which is very exciting. We're over on YouTube. If you haven't hit the subscribe button over there, please feel free to do so, because I want to ride this new co-host bump as far as we can take it. So, we are trucking our way to the next milestone over there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. And every day is, we'll see you tomorrow. But until then, make sure you stay locked on.